Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Garza from New Home Independent School District Police Department. He has a vast background in corrections and law enforcement, and I'm really looking forward to having him on today's episode. So, welcome to the show,
Yes,
Chief Garza. Thank you so much for
yes,
being here.
ma'am. Thank you, Paige. Thank you for allowing me to do this and stuff. I feel this is just an op awesome opportunity for me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I know I'm going to let you actually give your background because obviously I know a little bit about you, but what can you share about yourself and your career with our listeners today?
Okay. So far as work career and stuff, I started in corrections. I did that for about 15 years from the time I was 19 to, oh God, I'm not very good at math, but I did it for 15 years. Um, from there, I actually went to a police academy, got into law enforcement, and I started with a county sheriff's department working on patrol, and then I worked my way up into an ISD department. I say worked my way up, but it was kind of a friendly gesture from a friend of mine that asked me to come work with him. And since then, I've worked for two other departments where I'm at now as chief of police for this department here.
That's awesome.
51 years old, three, I don't call them kids anymore. I call them adults, 25, 22, 21, blessings and stuff. Been married with my wife 27 years.
Wow.
It's me.
What is the key to a long and successful marriage?
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, because that is one topic that we talk about a lot on this podcast is, wellness and home life. And we know that divorce is a big thing. And so being with someone for 27 years and being in this career, what is the secret?
The secret. Honestly, I think I take it as a blessing as far as coming into law enforcement at a very, I want to say older age, but it was on down the line. We'll just say it like that and stuff. When I started into law enforcement, I was 36. I was already married 11 years, 11, 12 years. Um, So we've already had that solid base and stuff with each other. My wife actually works for the federal government on the other side of it and stuff, so she understands what I do as far as law enforcement and what it takes. And fortunately, I was blessed with a very, very, very strong-willed wife, and she just makes it work for us and stuff. She's my rock. She's definitely my rock, and I just try to be there for her 24/7 when I can and stuff. With work wise and stuff, I've been blessed to for the departments that I've worked at that I've always been able to attend functions with my family, functions with my kids and stuff. So I've always been there. I've been blessed that I'm not that officer that's always been stuck on shifts where I can't see my kids, where I can't. I've always been able to make things work somehow, some way. For instance, when I worked for the county, the kids were younger. Um, I worked night shift. I was a corporal on night, so shift started at 9 at night, shifting it at 7 in the morning. I'd get home, kind of change, get all my kids together, take them to school, come home, sleep till about 2, get up, pick my kids up, and I had the rest of the day with them. So my path and my career, I've really been fortunate to keep my family ties strong.
Yeah. I like that you said that you were fortunate to work with departments and, agencies that also allowed that to happen. But then you also had a foundation where you prioritized those
Yes,
things
ma'am.
as well. It's a
Absolutely.
partnership, having support from the organization, but also you prioritized your family for yourself. And I think that's an important reminder. And I've said this many times on this podcast. I am super guilty of prioritizing my profession over my family and missing out on things that you can't get back.
Right.
You can't get those times back, especially as people start to leave this earth and and you have a lot of regrets and
Yeah.
wishes. And so I appreciate you saying that one, you had support, but also you made it happen through
Yes,
your
ma'am.
own priorities.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The department, again, the departments that I've worked before and stuff, again, I've been blessed. Like the motto, what from my supervisors at the time was always family first,
Mm.
right? I believe in that so wholeheartedly because that's where I came from. And then working for departments that had that same mentality just made work a whole lot easier. And it was just a blessing to be able to be there.
Yeah, I've been putting a lot of thought into this lately because I think sometimes we put things in different boxes, right? We kind of think very linearly
Right.
when it comes to certain things. And, we have these conversations about wellness and what the pillars of wellness are. And we hear physical, mental, nutritional, financial. And I think that there are a lot more pillars than we even recognize right now. And I think that home wellness, home life is a pillar. Like I think that if you can have a strong home life, that is going to impact how you are physically, mentally,
Right.
at home and on the job. And I think that there's a lot of other things that go with this. I've been having these conversations. I'm going to map out, we're going to have like 50 pillars of wellness by the end of this. But I really do think that it's almost reverse engineering. It's how can you prioritize your life outside of your career first,
Right.
and then that'll bleed into everything else that you do
Yeah.
professionally.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of the guys that I worked with and worked for me when I was a corporal on county and stuff, they were. I wasn't that young go hun kind of guy when I got in law enforcement already. I've did my time. I worked. Cadets, police officers coming in now are in their 20s, mid 20s and stuff, and they've got that mentality, that alpha male mentality. That they just want to go, 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 and they want to get involved in whether it's criminal investigations, whether it's SWAT, whether I'm like, slow down,
Yeah.
understand where you came from. If you have a family in place and stuff, don't forget that because that is such an important part that's going to make your career last longer and stuff because you're going to need that support at some point in time.
Yeah. Someone said the other day, I really like this. I'd never heard this before, but they said, God wasted youth on the young. And I really liked it because,
Yeah, yeah,
as we get older, I do think that, obviously we're wiser, but I also feel like we're more grounded. We have different perspectives on things. And I didn't have that when I was younger. I didn't have that awareness around the things that were important. And it was like a day-to-day thing. It was a very like selfish time where I was just like, I'm gonna do me.
yeah.
And
Do
I
me.
never thought that I would be as old as I am today. And then you blink and we're here. And
Yeah,
I like that expression. I thought that was interesting that God wasted youth on the young.
I'm young.
Because if
I
we
agree.
if we had youth, right now with all of the
Oh yeah.
experiences and everything that we know, it would be such a different ball game.
Yeah. It would be a completely ball game, and who's to say you wouldn't be in a different type of career and stuff just because all the knowledge you would have right now and be young enough to do it and pursue it and understand that, back then when we were younger, or me personally, like once I got a job, I was in it. I didn't really, my career path was that. Like when I started with corrections and stuff, I was gonna move up. I was gonna do what I wanted to do within the job, but I never it took 15 years for me to look outside the job and have other people come to me, like I told you before about the other police departments, telling me, hey, you're in the wrong place. You need to be on this side with us and stuff. So
Yeah.
uh, I hear you 100.
Have you ever heard, when people are new at something, that they have this almost like tunnel vision? There's no periphery. And I've experienced this before. I used to be a professional skydiver, so I relate this a lot
Yeah,
to professional skydiving. And when you are brand new, you can only see what is directly in front of you. There's no zoom out to like see your surroundings. And then as you become more experienced, you can see everything.
right.
You can see the mountains off in the distance. You can see, another group up ahead, like pulling their parachute. Like you start to see everything.
Yeah,
And I've heard of this in the context of the first responder profession as well. Brand new officers, maybe it's like this pinpoint vision of like, this is what you see. And then as you get experience, you start to be able to really take in your surroundings of what's going on around you. And I feel like that is what happens in life too. As we get older, you only see what's in front of you at first. You're kind of in that grind of like, okay, I'm just going to keep going and this is all I'm going to do. And then as you get older, you zoom out a little bit and you start to see your surroundings and what's going on. So
yeah. That's awesome. That makes so much sense and stuff. Even when you think about young cadets and stuff coming in to the academy or even their first few weeks on FTO training and stuff, they're kind of like horse races and stuff. Horses with the blinders on them and stuff.
Mm, yeah.
All they see is forward, right? And they don't see anything. We call it, in our work, it's tunnel vision,
Yep.
right? So when we go and do tactics and stuff, a lot of officers, younger officers, they get that tunnel vision and they're focused on the one thing and they forget everything about them and stuff, right? Kind of the same thing. The more repetitions, the more you learn from it and stuff, the wider your vision gets and stuff, and you get so much better with your tactics too. So
Yeah.
it's funny how you put
Yeah.
that together.
Well, you miss a lot, and I think there is a level of safety that comes with being able to see more.
Right.
I think that wellness follows that as well when you have more of that perspective of what's going on around you. And so I think, unfortunately, sometimes it just does take that time and that experience for that, vision to start expanding. You were in corrections for 15 years.
Yes.
What was that like? And what lessons did you learn during that time that, helped you not only just in your career now, but just in life?
Yeah. So, so I started corrections when I was 19. Um, Went to college, tried to play. I played college ball due to injuries and stuff. It just didn't work out for me and stuff. I come from a very traditional uh, Hispanic family, Mexican family and stuff. And I came home from college and told dad, I don't, this isn't for me. This is not what I want to do. And it's kind of a traditional thing. My dad was just like, okay, well, you can't stay here. You better figure something out, right? So, I got into corrections, went to the academy. Um, the academy was crazy. It was 4 weeks is all it took and stuff. And it's mind blowing. For now, I think it's like four months.
Mm.
So comparing the time and the way they had it back then to the way now, it just shows you how much growth has been within. It's the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and stuff.
Yeah.
It's they're starting to learn more and they're starting to add more that these what we should have had when we were younger. They're actually offering it to the new boots or cadets or what do you correctional officers when they come in now. Started, went through the academy. Um, it was it was different. My career in corrections, I worked a couple of general population units. General population meaning 2,200 beds, 2,200 inmates, huge facilities and stuff. I worked a few of those, and then the main majority of my corrections career was on a psychiatric unit,
Mm.
which is it's a different world within itself. Um, the people there, the clients there, inmates care, whatever. Um, you could have somebody that stole baseball cards to, serial killers and stuff. So it was very vast and stuff, but they all had mental problems. So that was a little different. But I think that helped me now with my job now in the last few years and stuff because it hadn't been not recently, but like law enforcement itself as a whole has really started pushing on mental health and adding courses for police officers to understand people with mental health problems and stuff and actually be certified as a mental health police officer. So my background coming out of corrections and the 12, 13 years that I worked on a psychiatric correction facility really came into play for me with my career now. I'm able to see it when somebody may be having a mental breakdown and be able to work through with them through it. So that call doesn't go out of hand, get out of hand, or anything of that nature and stuff. Yeah, corrections helped me a lot with my law enforcement. Again, the last 4 years of my corrections, I did gang intelligence. That was my thing. I loved it. You confirm, you go through people's mail, you check tattoos, you check, you know, it was gang intelligence was within itself in corrections. You can learn so much that when you come out of it, well, I'm going to say come, but when you use it on the outside world, outside the walls of the prison stuff, it's amazing what you see and what you catch. And you spoke about that before,
Yeah.
just the little things as far as tattoos and stuff. Um, so gang intelligence for me helped me that way, but it also helped me with my career because at the time I was teaching gang intelligence as far as tattoo recognition and different prison gangs that are associated with street gangs that the police department might be dealing with. And a lot of officers came to me and was like, "Hey, you're in the wrong place. You know, you need to be out here in the streets. You need to be out here with us, teaching this and showing people this." So, and that's really at 36. That's really took me. Say, you know what? I'm gonna break out and I'm gonna try this, and it's been a blessing since.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I had someone else who was on the podcast that used to be in California that would work in the mental health side of things in corrections. And he talked a lot about how you really had to learn verbal de-escalation as much as you could because it was different. It was a different environment. And I would imagine that, wherever you were within, corrections, that you do have to learn how to speak to people. You have to learn how to de-escalate verbally as much as you can. But I also would imagine that it teaches you empathy in a way of like getting to know people and understanding, maybe where they came from and how they got to where they were. To your point, maybe someone stole baseball cards or, maybe it was something way worse and everything in between, but having those conversations and kind of understanding people a little bit more. What you were referring to, I'll tell everyone who's listening. So my dad was in prison. He was gang affiliated and he served a 6-year sentence. And when he went in, he had no tattoos. And when he came out, he was fully tatted, like hands, arms, stomach, back, full tats, all in prison. And he has a gang affiliated tattoo on his hand, like right in between like his pointer finger and his thumb, like right there. He has this tattoo. And I always knew what it was. I think I was really young and maybe didn't understand it when I was like really, really young, but now I obviously understand what it is. And I was in California and I was at a taco stand and I was going to get lunch and there was a guy who was ordering tacos ahead of me and he like turned to me and he's like, "Man, they have really good food here." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, it's really good." And he starts talking to me and the way that he talked to me without even seeing any of his tattoos or anything, I just knew immediately that he had been in prison because he reminded me so much of my dad. His mannerisms, the way he talked, the way like he wanted to interact with me, it was just like a replica of my dad, and I just knew it. And so, I talked to him for a little bit, and then I ordered my tacos, and then we went to like the little waiting area, and we kind of sat next to each other. And he starts talking to me about how he served a 20-year sentence. And he was released, some time ago. And now he helps people who were in prison kind of get off on the right track once they're released. So he, is trying to give back to the community. But he had a tattoo on his hand in the same exact spot. And so I knew, like, when we started talking, like, before he even said I was in prison for 20 years, right when I saw that tattoo, it like solidified what I had thought before
Yeah.
from his mannerisms. And I actually told my dad about this because I was like, "Man, he reminded me so much of you." And, he had this tattoo on his hand, like, same spot as you. And I told him what it was, and he knew exactly what the gang was. Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. He goes, "Yep, it was this gang." And I was like, "Well, I didn't ask him." Like, we didn't get that far in
Right, right.
conversation. But man, he seemed, I think I have probably a different perspective than, other people might, just because like it is an interesting dynamic to have had a parent who was incarcerated and you have love for a parent, and so you see all the good parts of them and maybe not necessarily all of the bad things. And so I think that I have a lot of empathy. And I also think that conversation with that guy at the taco shop, like I wasn't at all scared. I was like totally invested in the fact that like he was able to rehabilitate. He came out, like now he's trying to get back to the community. He's like, "I got a job." He's like, "I live over here, I love it." And he was just, so happy to have this new chapter in his life. And I know it doesn't always end up that way. But it's really interesting to be able, like, once you, understand,
Yeah.
someone in that environment, you can kind of point them out pretty quickly.
Yeah. It comes like second nature sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. So now you're in school policing, and one of the things that you told me that really stuck out was that you are working with your future, with the future. And you kind of explained a few things to me that I was hoping you could reiterate to our listeners just about, the things that you're doing and your approach to the younger generation to, have a positive impact on them and their future.
Yeah, so I've been doing school policing for 12 years. Um, and at the beginning, just like any new job and stuff, you're like, what am I doing? What am I getting myself into? But once I started figuring out the flow of things, how how school policing is completely different from working the streets or working a beat or whatever it is. Um, and just understanding the discretion I have, especially now as chief here, and it's just me, the discretion I have to deal with different charges per se, if it ever got to that point and stuff where a criminal charge may be applied. Um, uh, but it's at my discretion whether I do it or not. And I take that as a blessing because I'm able to work with these kids. I'm able to show them what their future could be, right? Say, I have one that just does a criminal mischief thing. I can bring him in my office. I can talk to him or her. I can show them and I can say, hey, this is this type of criminal offense. This is what it's either a misdemeanor or a felony. This is what you could lead into and stuff. And just kind of talk to them about you can avoid all that, but by not doing by taking a different route and learning something different and pushing off that way. And once I start figuring out that flow is how I'm able to work with these kids, um, and give them the knowledge that maybe I know during my time we didn't have, back in the days we didn't have officers in schools. And when police officers did start working within the schools and stuff, it wasn't necessarily really to work with the kids. It was just safety and security.
Mm,
Um, Here recently, the last 7, 8 years, there's been a turn and stuff as far as taking advantage of what we are within the schools. Yes, we're here to provide safety and security for staff, for students. Um, but at the same time, it's funny how because of the uniform and because of who we are, we some oftentimes we turn into counselors for these kids, because they don't want to talk to their teachers about it or they don't want to talk to the principals about it. For some odd reason, I don't know if it's in some cases and stuff, the uniform is a sense of comfort because there may have been a time in their past and stuff where an officer showed up at their house during an incident,
mm,
and that officer came in and did his job and took that kid and protected that kid. So I think that sets in with a lot of kids, and they just come to you and stuff, and they want to be around you. They want to ask questions, and I take that as a blessing because I'm able to provide them with just, a sense of security that I'm here to help you. I'm not here to hurt you, right? It's always been a saying and stuff, regardless of whatever department you work with. We want kids to run to us and not away from us, right?
mm,
So, and I feel like it's a benefit for me to be here and to know what I know and just to reinforce that just for the next officer that comes through here, the next chief that comes through here, or the next police officer or deputy that the kid might run into in, outside of school, at least they know that's a good place to be. That's a good person to talk to. Um, just to give them that sense of comfort. When I say working with my future, I take that and it takes me a minute sometimes to think about it and stuff as far as how I want to express that because sometimes when I think about that, I get speechless and stuff because I'm working with my future, whether it's a doctor, whether it's the next police officer, whatever the case may be as far as careers and stuff. I'm here to help these kids to get to that point
mm.
and just and again, I'm speechless and stuff when I start thinking about this because it's a big responsibility with myself that I take, but I take it with pride and I do it at the absolute best that I can and stuff. When I talk to these kids and just tell them, your life could be this if you pursue this, avoid this. And sometimes it goes inside in one ear and out the other, right? But there's a lot of kids that I've been fortunate enough that come back to me years from now, and I may run into them at a grocery store or just out and about and stuff, and they come up to me and like, "Hey, Officer Garza, hey, how's it going?" And it'll take me a minute to understand, to remember who they are because I've worked three different districts. But once it comes back, and then, it's funny to hear back the stories from them as far as how their lives have changed, or just a little. To me, listening to them, sometimes it's not. It may be significant, but to them, it was a very pivotal point in their life and stuff. Whatever I said it to them at that time and stuff, that actually changed their route in life, and they're doing good, and they're doing better, and they're prospering and doing just doing awesome things. I just talked to a kid recently. He's going to go to trooper school. He's going to be, he's going to DPS Academy and stuff, and I feel so good, and that's why when I come speechless, because I feel so good that I was actually a part of that, and
Yeah.
I made that happen for him and stuff.
What a beautiful statement to say we want kids to run towards us, not away from us, and to prioritize your time to try to be a positive influence and mentor for these kids. It it makes me emotional too because I was one of those kids that
Mhm.
didn't have a guiding light. Like I didn't have someone telling me you could do great things. And I wish I would have. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing to try to not just mold the future, but give them hope, give them inspiration for what they could be. Because, you know, I was a really good kid until I was in high school, and then I started acting out, and I was getting in trouble a lot, and I was not making good choices, and I never ever had someone pull me aside and talk to me like that. I never had someone say, "Hey, what's going on?" They didn't show any interest. I didn't feel like I was worthwhile to
Yeah.
anybody, and it was just discipline. That was all I would get as discipline. And it made me more and more angry, and it made me more and more hopeless because I just felt like I was treated like I was always treated, like I was just, not worth, you know,
The
love or
time,
time.
the
Yeah.
time to put into you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really, really do appreciate the work that you're doing. And I do think that it's going to impact lives. I mean, it already has. You already have testimonials of people saying
Yes.
that they're going off and doing great things. And one of the things that I had thought about after we talked, offline before we had this conversation today was what a cool kind of full circle moment for you to have started in corrections and, seeing all kinds of people, and I'm sure also young people entering into the system. And now you're in a position as the chief working within school districts where you can help to keep some of those kids and young adults out of the system. How can you start early by positive mentorship and communication and conversation and making them feel valued so that they do choose a different path and maybe don't go down that path that was originally given to them, through their
Yeah.
circumstances. So I really thought that was a cool full circle that you now get to give back in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it and stuff. And you talk about that. Um, I remember one specific family when I was working for the first school district that I worked for. Um, funny the way it worked out. The first school district I worked for uh, was Lamesa, and that's my hometown. That's where I was born and raised. So I didn't actually know the kids, but I knew the parents and stuff because I grew up with them. We went to high school, we went to elementary, middle school together, and I call it a generational curse, right? There's some families that just get involved in things, and it's generational to where they teach it to their son, their daughter, and they get their information or their knowledge from their uncles or their parents, and then they may be involved in some type of family business. It's criminal, right? And it's funny. I had twin boys, Caught them in school with drugs and stuff they shouldn't have. Again, my discretion. I I don't know why I kind of took like I want to change this for these guys for these kids. So I brought them both in my office. I sat down and I talked to them. I said, "Look, this is the charges we're looking at. This is what's gonna can happen, right?" But I didn't. I told I took it as a benefit to I was able to talk to them about their family. And I told him, I've been there. I know who they are. I
Mm-hmm.
know what your family does. I know. And that's when I started talking to him, about you can change your future,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you choose to. You don't have to keep that generational curse going within your family and stuff. And, flash forward, um, they're both doing great. I actually ran into him at a football game in La Mesa one time, and one's out in the oil field business, which is big in this area and stuff, doing great. The other brother, he's a welder, and they're just doing awesome. And then they bring that stuff up, like I remember they would tell me, Officer Gar, you were hard on us, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I'd bring him into my office and talk to him, and if there was a discipline problem with a teacher or something that the teacher couldn't handle, um, because they knew that my relationship with them and stuff, I was able to bring them to office and try to correct things and get things straight and or calm them down when they were going off the top of their head and stuff. And they're just,
Yeah.
I was able to talk to them, calm them down and stuff. And I just had that relationship with them and to see them, um, you know, doing awesome things and really breaking that generational curse and stuff in that family to where from that point on from them, um, I think I know they're gonna continue on, do great things. Their kids are gonna do great things, and it's gonna just change, their path.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah,
And, I think that tough love is still love. And sometimes we need that in our lives.
absolutely.
Sometimes we need someone to like look us in the eye and like shake us a little bit and be
Yeah,
like, hey, like wake up. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I care about you. There is love and care behind what I'm saying, and
right.
I want what's best for you. And we all have the time to do that for other people. Whether that's in
Absolutely.
our personal lives or our professional lives, it kind of goes back to what we said before. Sometimes, and I'm also guilty of this, like I am very busy. We're all busy. We're working long hours, we're juggling home life and work life and all the things. And sometimes I do feel like I am so in the like trenches that like maybe I'm in the trenches for like a month and then I like climb out and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like fresh air up here, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize like how ingrained I was. But I think it's so important for us to have those moments of like not having the tunnel vision. How can you like open up your awareness and understand that even though we're busy, we have time to take care of ourselves and we have time to take care of other people and to positively influence our future and other people's future. And it kind of goes back to what you said before, before maybe you didn't connect with the kids, that wasn't like the function of an officer at a school. But now you're utilizing that time effectively to have these conversations and connect. How can other officers who are, in other areas, maybe it's a municipal policing or county policing, how can you also take that time when you're out driving around? How can you step out and have these conversations? How can you, say hi to people and create those connections that are going to help people to feel like they have other options?
Doing that. So I can like when I was on patrol with county, um, I just had it in me just to somebody on the side of the road changing a tire. I was going to pull over. For
Mm,
one, it was a safety issue, right? And I'm just doing my job because we are here to protect and serve. And that's what we do. And if I can protect that person while they're changing a tire with my lights and siren or my lights behind them, and then I can go up there and physically help and serve, those are the little things that I took. processed and just kind of make those kind of things grow, reaching out to the community. And then in school policing, that has helped so much. If if there could be a, and I think there is nowadays, but if there could be courses as far as um, public relationships,
Hmm.
but in a positive aspect, learning how to be appreciative of the public, even though there are times when, you're shunned on or they're just you get talked to in a different manner that you're not used to, and you get those type of people. But if you're able to work through that, and I can say that because it's happened time and time again. And I think my background again in corrections has helped me so much because quite honestly, I was called every name in the book in
Hmm.
corrections. So I built a thick skin, and that's what helped me in patrolling. That's one thing you got to have. You got to have a thick skin. You can't allow your personal emotions to get involved with that call that you're dealing with. Always stay professional with it. Take care of the call. Work through it. 9 times out of 10, that person will calm down if you don't turn it into a confrontational. If you just talk to them, one of the biggest things is listening. Just allow somebody to vent. Um, it's funny how some people or a lot of people will calm down after that. And then you're able to work through the problem with them and stuff. Or, I've had people just, they've got a criminal charge. They're being, not necessarily violent, but they tell me right off the bat, I'm not going with you. And after talking to them and stuff and working with them and tell them, hey, this could this is the outcome. This is the road you're taking with me. It's gonna lead you to jail and you're not gonna like it. Well, we can go this route. You're still gonna go to jail, but I'll be able to help you, maybe of a lesser charge, because that's when that police discretion comes back in. Maybe it's a lesser charge. Maybe, you know, let's forget about this charge and let's work on it and we'll just charge you for this. And just talking to them that way makes things so much easier to where I've had people just turn around and like, all right, put the handcuffs on, go ahead and take me in and stuff. So definitely being able to listen, being, as you said earlier, being with empathy,
Hmm.
not sympathy, but with empathy and just working with people and working on those relationships and just continue. Um, Take it outside of work and work on your people skills with people outside, and that's the biggest thing for me coming in at 36. I had relationships outside of departments I worked for. Younger guys that come in and stuff, that's their family, which is true. We're a family of blue, right? We're a blue family. But you can't forget about your outside relationships and stuff because you need that in order to function within a department because you have an outlet to go have other friends outside of work that you're able to hang around with and not bring up work because it never fails. You stay within that circle and you have barbecues or whatever with your friends and stuff, if you're not careful about it, it turns into just talking about call after call, and it's not healthy because you need to get out of that mentality and stuff. You need to break away from that. You need to separate yourself from that stuff. And that's where outside friends, especially family, like again, my wife again, really helped me be able to do that. And it helps and it works.
Yeah. I really like that you said listening, and I think it's listening to actually hear and understand. And I think when people feel heard, that's all they're looking for sometimes,
Yeah.
is just for you to like hear them and to like at least try to empathize and understand with them. And I do think that that's a really big tool in de-escalation, and not just in the job, but like also at home. Imagine having, if anyone who's listening has ever had a confrontation or like an argument with a spouse, and sometimes it's just like, you are not listening to me. You don't
Right.
hear me. And like it escalates and escalates. And if someone's like, hey, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, it just brings that level down immediately. So I really like that. And I also think that we're going to add community and service as another pillar of
There
wellness,
you
because I do think
go.
that I do think that impacts a lot. If you're having positive interactions within the community and you feel like you are of service to people, it feels good. Even when you're stressed, even when things are hard, it's kind of that counterpart. And I think that that is associated with wellness. One of the pillars, obviously that we talk a lot about in wellness is physical wellness. And you said that you are a gym rat,
Yeah.
and you also said that you had an injury and that you had learned a lesson from this. And I was hoping that you can share the lesson that you learned.
Yeah. So, oddly enough, I had this right before I turned, actually a year before I turned 50, at 49, on my 49th birthday. I had these goals as far as, and again, gym rat, meathead, whatever you want to call it. I was in the gym, and that was, but that was my place to decompress and not think about work, not think about family, just to just let everything go and work on myself. But I had this kind of thing for myself that I was going to lift this certain amount of weight at 50. Worked up to it and stuff, and got to it, ended up pushing too hard, and I ruptured my tricep,
Mm,
and that just threw me for a loop, right? Because everything that I worked up to, everything that I've done prior to that, it was um it was me, right? It was my what everybody saw me as, right? It's this big guy that likes to lift weights and stuff, and so it was yeah, it was just like my profile. That's who Jacob was. That's who Chief Garza was. That's what he does. So in order not to be able to be that person anymore, because physically I just couldn't do it, that really threw me for a loop and made me rethink things, made me kind of figure out, not necessarily figure out, but just like, okay, what am I going to focus on now?
mm,
What can I do now? Um, what's important, and to really sit back and, like you said, you brought the boxes up earlier, kind of put that box away and put it back and bring up some other boxes that may have been missing in my life that I needed to open up again and look at and maybe focus back on and concentrate on. Really helped me and stuff as far as my life, my family life, work life. Just it was, I take it as a blessing now. I wish it would have happened a few years back,
mhm.
right? But it had what it is, what it is. It did what it did, and I'm turning that negative definitely into a positive. Um, just being able to take that time, hours upon hours that I spent in the gym and stuff, but take that time now and focus in on my family, focus in on work, focus in on relationships within my job and stuff that's going to benefit me more than an hour and a half workout would have done, So it's funny how things worked out for me. It's actually given me a new breath of life that, like, okay, I can take that structure I had in the gym and I can apply it to here now.
Mhm.
And just doing a little bit of that right now. I'm still learning from it, but it's amazing the doors that have opened up for me. Obviously, I'm here. Um, and just the networking and just all the doors that it's opened up for me that I'm not taking for granted anymore. And yeah, so it's the worst injury that could have happened to me has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does. And what you just described as resiliency, it's how do you get back up and how do you move forward?
Right.
And I do think that comparison is the thief of all joy. And I think that we do that a lot. We start to compare how our life used to be before something,
Right.
or how our bodies used to be when we were younger, or what we used to be capable of doing that now we're not capable of doing anymore. And I think that that puts us into a negative cycle mentally if you're
Right.
always looking in the rear view, right? You're
Yeah.
always comparing yourself to a past version, or if you're comparing yourself to other people, you lose the joy of what you do have or what your future looks like. And so I really like that you said this allowed me to open up the realm of possibilities
Yeah.
and, deepen my relationships and, prioritize different things that I wasn't doing before. And to me, that's resiliency. It's not falling and staying down. It's getting back up, maybe a little bit more bruised and
Yeah.
and beat up than you were before, but you're still walking the path forward. And I think it's a really important reminder because life is going to kick us all down at some point
Definitely.
and multiple times. I don't know anyone who hasn't gotten their ass kicked at some point, with life. And
Yep.
so, how do we turn those into positives? How do we grow? How do we learn from those things? And how do we improve ourselves because of or in spite of those things? To me, that's resiliency.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, you already gave so many really amazing words of wisdom, but I have to ask the question as kind of a final signature. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who is earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Definitely, if I could just give a nugget of knowledge and stuff, that's something they could kind of not necessarily just take, but just think about it and maybe work it in somewhere is we talk, I talk a lot about my family. Again, I came into law enforcement a little bit older and stuff. So my base as far as my family has always been there. So anybody younger coming into policing and they want to do this job, um, don't forget where you come from.
Mm,
Don't forget what is a part of you as far as family, friends. I see a lot of guys that come into policing and stuff and they forget their friends because they have this new set of friends, right? And it's funny, like I wholeheartedly believe in the family of blue. I love every time I see another officer, it's more than a shake. Sometimes it's the bro hug or something of that nature, right? We just have that with each other. When I go to conferences and stuff every year, I love seeing the guys that have it. It's been a whole year since I've seen them, but that brotherhood is there, which is great. It's a good thing. Allows us to network and learn from each other and grow as officers. But don't forget where you come from and don't forget why you're doing what you're doing as far as it may be something financial and stuff. You're looking for something better for yourself and your family and your kids and your wife or your mom and dad or just something outside of work that you're pushing to make better. Don't ever forget about that. Um, I tell people all that time that and just, be open to the job. That's one of the biggest, that's another thing I think about is be open to the job and be open to what life lessons, what you're going to learn from the job. Because they can give you a book and they can give you a manual and policy and procedures, and they can tell you this is how things are done. Uh, Me, I was fortunate enough that I had vetted uh, police officers before me that brought me in and said, yes,
mm,
this is what policy says. But this is what you can also do, thinking outside the box. So that's another thing I would tell, think outside the box sometimes. Stay within the guidelines, stay within the codes. But if you can make just one significant change that's probably going to change that person's life or change the whole outcome of it, of the situation itself, where it doesn't get violent or anything of that nature, do it.
mm.
Do it. You might be teaching an older officer such as myself something new, and we're going to run with it. Well, we'll take it and we'll learn from it too. So definitely those two things.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing your experience, your wisdom. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said, this is such a blessing for you to reach out and stuff. Thank you so much.
Of course.